and welcome back to the next episode of the Thru Podcast. Today we're going to be discussing Mindfulness Days and our mindfulness campaign. Basically, what we want and what we're looking for is every employer up and down the country to include Mindfulness Days on top of the annual leave entitlement for all employees. Now, this would mean that an employee who was struggling with their mental health could take a mindfulness day just to reset, recharge the batteries, take time for themselves, and they could phone their boss and say, look, I'm really sorry, I don't feel like it today, I'm really struggling, I'll come back in tomorrow, and they can do whatever they want with that day to make them feel better. Now, there's loads of different ways to practice mindfulness, isn't there?
Yeah, no, I think it's, like I say, it's one of those important things that we talk about all the time, mindfulness. It's all about paying attention to the present moment. And I think when people hear mindfulness, and everybody knows it aids your mental health, but it's one of those things that gets very lost in a very whimsical kind of meaning. People don't quite really get it. Obviously, we're not here to kind of just tell you exactly what mindfulness is, but really the fundamentals of it is that you're paying attention to the present moment. I can only speak for myself, obviously, but I know that nobody will be able to tell me that their stress comes from anywhere else other than worrying about the future or dwelling on the past, and that kind of ruminating, that kind of cycle of being alone in your thoughts and being quite self-deprecating that way. So mindfulness is a way to kind of help you through that and pay attention to the present moment. So paying attention to the present moment doesn't just mean meditating in a house somewhere, like all this kind of spiritual music.
Although that can help, though, if that's your thing, that can help.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very spiritual experience, obviously, but we're not just talking about meditating. I mean, I do meditate, but other practices, do is I get mindfulness through exercise and things like my morning and kind of evening routine and stuff like that. And I know you've kind of.
Yeah, so I've got a lot of techniques that I use. It just really depends how I'm feeling that day and what I think is going to help me the most, whether that be a home workout for 30 minutes or some yoga or even cooking. There's just so many different ways for me to practice mindfulness. Sometimes it's just boiling the kettle, making a cup of tea. Sometimes, and I don't know why, but tea always soothes me and it always makes me feel better. And sometimes if you want to have a chat with a friend over a cup of tea, that can count as mindfulness as well. It's really just about what benefits you and what's going to calm your mind and bring you back into the present tense. Because as you say, we're normally worrying about things that are out of our control. I, for one, am a worrier. I'm always worrying about the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? What if I don't get a good night's sleep? I've got so much to do tomorrow. What if I can't do this? What if I can't do that? And I, for one, I'm really bad for that, and I need to use mindfulness to help calm and just remember that it's just take one step at a time. It's cheesy, but what's for you won't go past you. And you just need to use these techniques to kind of calm the brain, because sometimes your brain's just going at 100 miles an hour and you're trying to keep up with it. And that's how mindfulness helps me.
Yeah, I think it's really it's a real element of self-care. I think that people find it quite lost sometimes, is that it is about looking after yourself. So having a day to yourself means it's about looking after yourself. It's easy to have time off from something, but you need to replace that energy with some real kind of self-help tools, which we will go into in a minute. But I suppose what we want to kind of discuss today as well is that why they're needed in a workplace. Because I know we've both had experiences in work before where I suppose, like many others, it's an awkward topic to bring up to your bosses, that your mental health isn't all quite there. You're not feeling 100%.
Yeah, because you still feel that you're going to be judged. They're not going to believe you because you show up every day with a big Cheshire cat smile on your face, pretending that everything's okay. And if you go to someone and say, look, I know it looks like I'm okay, but actually I'm struggling today, you've still got that feeling within going, are they actually going to believe me, or are they going to think that I'm making it up? I can't help how I feel. So it's good. We need to be able to have like an open discussion with our colleagues, with our bosses, with everybody in a company. But as you were saying earlier, it's really hard, especially in a workplace like ours, where you're on a constant deadline. It's hard to actually take that time to yourself. And I know a lot of workplaces will be the same because you're constantly on a deadline or to meet certain targets within a specific time. It's not always easy to...
Yeah, I think what we're saying is it's not always priority in the workplace, and it's
and that's not necessarily anybody's fault. It's just...
No, I think, I mean, that's the thing I spoke to you about before. It's that I've never had an issue with anybody, like with how they've dealt with my mental health in the work, or when it affects my work or how I am in the workplace. It's more so the process, and there's almost a kind of, there's an awkwardness about from when you approach your line manager or need time off for your mental health, and to what they need to do about it and where that gets referred. So one thing I found quite fascinating as well before was that normally if you take a leave of absence for sickness, there's normally some kind of form to fill out. So
you have to fill out a form that asks you at least 5 or 6 questions why you were off.
Yeah,
and one of those questions is, did you get a doctor's line or did you go to your doctor? And you have to detail, if you did, what was said. It's
like self-assessment tool, basically, isn't it? I think what we're saying is that it's being treated the same as your physical health in the workplace, and always has, I suppose, in a sense. And I think we want it to be taken seriously as a physical health, but the process maybe needs to be slightly more sensitive to that. If I can just anecdotally say, an experience I had in the workplace, approaching a boss, mental health wasn't great. Basically, couldn't quite function. You know what it's like if you're kind of suffering from depression and you're quite paralysed in terms of your functionality, and even just trying to explain, this is why I'm not 100% right now. That was even before I even got started in anything. And
it's hard to define why you're not feeling 100% because you yourself don't always know, because there is no causal depression most of the time. Sometimes you just wake up in the morning and the next morning and the morning after that and you just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
There's no way to describe it. You don't understand what's triggered it, why it's been triggered, and if you don't understand it, then how are you going to be able to explain to a boss who quite rightly so needs an explanation as to why you're taking time off? But when it comes to your mental health, there definitely needs to be a more, maybe not subtle approach, but a kinder approach to it, more understanding approach.
I think even if there's something in place to refer you, like not even they have the answers for you. Now I know that a lot of workplaces now have mental health first aiders, massive advocate of that.
Absolutely.
But I think I can only speak from experience I had before, and it was a case of, it was the point where I had to have someone else phone for me, right? And it was a case of, and at this point, my mental health had really deteriorated, and the really difficult thing that had to be explained to my boss was that Matt has experienced suicidal thoughts. This is obviously like, listen, if someone approached me for that as work, for someone I've never spoke to, of course I'm going to be like, what would you even say to that? And like, who do you speak to above that? I don't know, but even if there's a process, right, okay, stop right there. This is what we'll do. We get someone in touch straight away. Just someone specialised into it. If it is mental health first aid or whatever, I don't know. I know that many workplaces will have that process in place, but I feel like it's not often kind of talked about enough. It's not promoted as much as we want. It should obviously be kind of mandatory, if you like.
It still feels like the issue's swept under the carpet half the time.
Totally, that's what I felt,
And there have been days where I could really have done with a mindfulness day, just a day to recharge and come back feeling refreshed, because there's so many stresses, especially in the workplace as well, that we can't always get our heads around, and sometimes we just need to take that day to ourselves.
Yeah, I think that's the whole idea of obviously your mental health being a priority just as much as your physical health, but also the work as well, because I know from a business point of view you're always concerned about the work getting done, the deadlines, all the rest of it. And
you don't want to let your team down, you don't let your bosses down, you feel that you owe them more than you owe yourself. I need to be there, I need to do this. If I don't turn up, this won't get done. If I don't do this, so-and-so will suffer as a result. And you end up in this revolving, vicious cycle even, where you're working and working and working. That's great, but you're working so hard that you're not able to keep up mentally, if that makes sense.
No, totally, absolutely. Yeah, and the thing about that is that you kind of go straight into thinking, I'm not doing my job right, I'm not good. And the thing is, when you're feeling that low, you're very, very sensitive to what others think and everything. And I mean, everybody already knows how hard it is to phone in sick for work, right? You like your arms hanging off, whatever, or you've just heart attack.
I know. I shake when I'm phoning in sick to work because you feel so.
It's a very normal thing, right?
And you don't want to let anybody down.
Yeah, and we were talking about like phoning in about mental health. We always talk about it as if it's like a new thing that people experience. It's not. Mental health's always been there.
Yeah.
But it is like 10 times more difficult trying to explain something that they can't see that's wrong with you, you know. So I think it's one of those things you just need to kind of there needs to be kind of maybe a slightly better process in place for that, just a bit easier, because and I'm not speak for many saying I'm a lot more comfortable saying that I've got a sore leg than I do that I feel depressed. Do you know what I mean? Like whatever. Do you know what I mean? So it's as simple as that, and just having these kind of things in place. Maybe it's just making sure that people can return to work the right way as well. I always felt that when I was off with the mental health issue, I felt rushed back from work. No one was on the phone saying when you come back, although that has happened before. It was more so that kind of pressure. You always felt you needed to kind of phone and check in and say, and it wasn't doing you any favours at all in terms of how you're feeling.
That just adds the pressure, I find, if you have to phone in every day to say that you're still going to be off sick, to still say I'm not coming in. I'm like, that adds to the anxiety and the stress, and instead of you being able to take that time to get better, it actually makes you feel worse because you're still constantly worrying about the workplace and what others are thinking of you. And to go back to what you said before, it's like when you're feeling slightly down or depressed in the workplace, you are a lot more sensitive, and I know I experience that as well. For example, let's say somebody that I normally can have like a normal conversation with, let's say they're really, really busy, just doing their job. Sometimes I'll be thinking, oh, have I done something wrong? Do they like me? I think they don't like me anymore. Why is this? What have I done? Absolutely, what have I done wrong? And then the next day, maybe they're still busy and your mind's going 100 miles an hour and you're still thinking, they really don't like me. They don't like me anymore. What have I done wrong? And then your brain goes even further, and before you know it, you're thinking about how you're going to be sacked and looking for a new job. When in actual fact, that's just your mind playing tricks on you.
Yeah, that's where it goes.
And you're still, you know deep down that everything's actually fine. Sometimes I find that if I don't hear from a boss, even on a daily basis, sometimes I find that quite hard. I like to be able to check in. Yeah. But then I realise, well, maybe it's a good thing that they're not constantly talking to me because they trust me and they trust me to do my job thoroughly as well. So it's just about trying to find that balance to keep going. And although you think at the worst, like everybody's against you, when they're really not, it's about trying to taking the time out and to reevaluate the situation.
Yeah, I think
would you normally think this of this person? Would you normally think they didn't like you? Would you normally be so paranoid about X, Y, and Z? And when you're having your good days, no, you're not. You're not paranoid. You're not worried. You're on top of the world. You don't care. You think what you want of me. Yeah. But then on your bad days, suddenly even the smallest thing can really, really hurt. Whatever that trigger is, it doesn't matter. It can still have devastating impact on your mental health.
I think as well, like you said it very well there, it's like obviously on a good day you look at things the right way, and I think objectively speaking, everybody is compassionate.
Yeah,
and
Scotland is a very compassionate country. I do find that. I think the Scots are very compassionate people.
Yeah, well. I anyone I've dealt with like face to face or on the phone, it's like right, okay, and it's I never feel an element of that judgment, but what I do feel sometimes is that awkwardness and the mental health side of it doesn't get taken as seriously. I know that I've never experienced anything as I would say like as traumatizing as like depression or anything like that, but in a way that is kind of true, because it's like for me it affects a lot more things like many other people than maybe it does for than like my kind of physical health would do. Do you know what I mean? Like, kind of my diabetes doesn't really cause me any kind of upsets. I mean, now and then it
can be quite hard to cope with.
It can affect my physical health, and sometimes I can't come in straight away, or because I have hypo in the morning or something like that. But I can deal with it. But when it comes to like suffering from anxiety or depression, that's more debilitating. And then it's more awkward to explain why that is debilitating. And then I always feel that doesn't get taken quite as seriously because I'm not shooting a needle into myself to prove it.
And also, you're so used to dealing with your diabetes, and you've been taught how to cope with it. There's no rule book of how to cope with mental health. There's no rule book. If you're feeling like this, do this and you'll feel so much better. It's a case of getting up and getting on with it and hoping that you'll feel better. There's nothing that's going to, like, there's no cure, basically.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I think that's hard because even doctors can't.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. We love like promoting as many resources as we can because they do help. So kind of going back to what we're obviously trying to do with the Mindfulness Days in the workplace, I think that is a really important part of it. That sense of security, it's something that's contracted to say, it's okay if you're going to have a wobble one day. It's okay. Listen, like any other sick days, whatever there might be, so like, it may have to be monitored in a certain way, but that's a process that will get fed if something like that were to go ahead.
Absolutely, and I know there are workplaces up and down the country that do offer 2 mindfulness days a year. Now, I'm not sure if you would take those mindfulness days one day after the other, or you would split them out. Ultimately, I'd maybe like to see 5, 7 mindfulness days, but we do have to be careful that it's not encouraging people to take time off work unnecessarily. But again, you do have the right to take time and work on your mental health, and you should have the right to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to take this mindfulness day, I'm going to do something that benefits me, and that could be anything at all. For example, I said I like yoga, I like working out, but I also like hill walking, I also like watching movies. Sometimes taking a day and not even...
It should be kind to yourself again, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes not even leaving the house can help. That sounds quite damaging sometimes, but if you're constantly on the go, sometimes you just need a day in, just under a blanket, watch a movie that
because you get the days when you can't face anybody. And I think that's one of the things we always kind of talk about. Even your doctor will always say, like, I felt like that you're withdrawn from like social contact or anything like that. And of course, that's a symptom of depression and anything to do with your mental health. So just having that kind of active withdrawal is very important. One thing I also want to say as well on the actual workplaces themselves is that, like I said, nobody introduces systems to be like abused as such. But what should happen though is on the other scope, which what we are very for is that there's a proactive measure to look after staff's mental health. So therefore, these days shouldn't really be in place anyway. Now I know that my current employers are very, very, very good on mental health. It's very much a priority for staff, and I feel already very looked after that way. And I know that lots of kind of colleagues I spoke to have spoke very highly of it as well. The difference, my current employer, perhaps my last one, is that I do feel a lot more comfortable maybe having mental health in the workplace kind of thing. But apart from that, it's a case of, I can go on my kind of day-to-day thing, my day-to-day duties, and if I do feel kind of under the weather mentally, then I can kind of say, that this is what's happening, because everybody's trained to a certain level to kind of accept that and be compassionate, then it's actually okay, That's really important as well, that employers are actually able to do that and share that compassion as well. And I think the purpose of this campaign is that all employers should be able to do that as well. It shouldn't just be dependent on what role you're in. It shouldn't depend what companies. You've got good companies and bad companies. All companies should be passionate and compassionate about mental health and how somebody's feeling that day. And I've said this before, being nice or nasty to somebody, you might not think making a sarky or a snidey comment at someone's that damaging, but that could be the difference of making or breaking someone's day. Yep.
And them going home with a smile on their face, or them going home crying themselves to sleep at night. And you might not realise, that might sound really stupid to somebody, what about my jokey comment, how could that possibly affect someone? Well, the person that you're saying said comment to might not take it the way it's intended, and it could be really detrimental to their mental health.
I think certainly speaking to younger people, that's very much the case as well. Like it's very much a more of an eggshell society in the kind of youth because online bullying and things like that is a lot more rife because it's more common form of communication. And yeah, like I said, so that it's that kind of thing we used to say about being kind to others and everything. That's so important, and it's one of those things that we're all playing a part in, and we all can play a part in to make sure we're looking after each other's mental health.
Absolutely, and that's another thing about the mindfulness campaign. Through speaking to mental health campaigners and charities, while they are on board with mental health days, it's important that these days don't promote selfishness. So if you're taking a mental health day, you can't use that as an excuse to be mean or unkind to others. It's about being kind to yourself, but as well being kind to others, because especially if you're going through something bad, you should be able to understand that somebody else might be going through the same thing as you. So it's about joining together and promoting mindfulness and me time, your time, but also doing it in a way that's kind to yourself and kind to others as well, as not going to affect them badly.
So when we're looking at what a mindfulness day would look like, I think we've spoke about a few ththings we can do so far, and it's about kind of looking after yourself as well as being kind to others, but making sure that your head's kind of back in check before you're kind of fit to work again. And again, like it's not like a big catastrophic event. It's literally just taking a bit of time out. It's like when you exercise, you stop every so often to take kind of time out. Otherwise, you'll just burn out, right? So that's kind of some stuff we're talking about. We've spoken about meditation quite early on in this, and it's something that we should probably touch on because of the benefits it does bring. Anyone I've spoke to throughout this project, most of them do meditate, albeit on different formats, different ways of doing it. One of the things I want to kind of share is obviously I use an app called Headspace, which is really, really popular, and a lot of people use that. And you can change, so you're basically just doing it once a day, and it's up to you. You can do a 3-minute session, a 5-minute session, a 10-minute session. And what that is it's just a kind of very accessible guide, earphones in, talk you through it. And it's focused on the breathing. Now, for anything that I've struggled with before, a lot of it always does come back to my breath. And that's always been from a very early age. When I was very young, I had a really bad kind of speech impairment. It was really, I would just stutter my words all the time. Sometimes that comes back through nerves, or whatever. But like the way I was taught to cope with it was through breathing and relaxation. And it wasn't until I looked back years later and go, God, I was getting taught mindfulness at a very, very early age, and just put us in like dark rooms and like the kind of like aroma music and stuff like that, making sure it's relaxing and basically teaching you how to breathe, but more importantly paying attention to the breath, and making sure that like I say, it's about being present, being paying attention to the present moment. So one of the things to clear up what I was talking about earlier on as well is that mindfulness isn't this just kind of thing you sit back and relax and sleep and you're not falling asleep. One of the best things I ever read when I started meditation was that meditation is not about falling asleep, it's about falling awake.
Right.
So it's this really idea that you're relaxing into a state of awareness and presence. And for me, that's always stuck with me when I do mindfulness, and especially when I do go through periods of stress, you're always just bringing it back. And by the way, as a practice, it's not a case of you're doing something to fix an issue. You don't have a stressful day and say, right, I'm going to chill out to some mindfulness today, I'm going to chill out to some like meditation, that will fix me. It's not like, it's kind of it's like brushing your teeth. You need to do it
every day,
maybe every day and consistent, not necessarily like every day for meditation, but as long
definitely every day for brushing your teeth though, guys.
as long as it is a practice though, and like anything else, like over time you see the results. So it's that kind of consistency, which I know we can speak on quite a lot. But yeah, for me, so Headspace is one thing I would definitely point to. Another free resource, and this is like the easiest thing to do. Anyone that's never started meditation before, start with a body scan, which you've probably done yourself. It's a case of, so it might be like 5-10 minutes, but the best thing to do is go onto YouTube, type in body scan meditation, look for like a 5 or a 10 minute video, which most will be, and someone just guides you through it, and basically just paying attention to your head, how that feels, how your jaw feels, and your mouth, everything, your tongue, like, and goes teach all the way through your body. And by the time you're finished, you feel the benefit, because what you've done is you've not worried about anything else, but just
apart from you.
Yeah, and what you've done is you've paid attention, you've focused on every part of your body, and like everything else, just being. It's about learning how to be. And again, it sometimes that sounds a wee bit whimsical to people, and a wee bit like, oh, like what is that? But I can only say, and I can only recommend people to start it and not like it, because people get very fidgety when they start. People say, oh, I can't do this, and met people I meet say, oh, I can't meditate. I was like, you need to get. It's not going to be easy that first time. It's not going to be easy that second time.
You need to take that time as well, that 5-10 minutes, because a lot of people will think to themselves, oh, I've got such a busy day, I don't have time to meditate.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, 5-10 minutes out of your day to ultimately benefit how you feel overall, that's worth it.
And so if you take that day or 5 minutes out of your day just to pay attention to yourself and revitalise, as I like to say, then it can do you the world of good. So I think Headspace are still doing a thing as well just now, where it's I think anyone that's job's been affected through COVID, you'll have kind of free resources.
That's good.
For like a limited amount, so I would check that, but it's definitely one thing I would want to promote. YouTube videos was where I kind of started when like body scan meditation, even just having meditation music, just having some kind of calming music, because people, sorry to practice meditation, but practice calmness. That's kind of so you're not getting too stressed in your hardships, and you're not getting too high in your kind of real kind of ecstasy moments. Like it's all about kind of trying to stay present within.
I find the way that I can do that is listening to classical music, actually, because I play violin and piano. And while I might not have really appreciated the opportunities I had when I was younger, thankfully I've managed to pick the skills up again. But what I really like doing is listening to classical music. I could listen to a 50-minute symphony, and that's not everybody's cup of tea, obviously, but I love it because I can imagine myself in the orchestra or in the moment playing. But well, that might sound quite nerve-wracking to some people. I find it so calming.
Yeah, it's like,
and I just sit there and I close my eyes and I let the music but I just go with the music and just listen to it, and I breathe in, I breathe out, I focus on my breathing, I focus on me and just how I'm feeling, and ultimately by the end of it, I feel warm and fuzzy at the end of it. I know that sounds silly, but it does genuinely really, really help when I listen to classical music. A favourite of mine is listening to the Star Wars soundtrack. I love the Star Wars soundtrack. It's so good though. And obviously there's some really heavy stuff, but there's some nice and light stuff, but because again, that's something that I associate with happiness, and I love listening to the soundtracks of all movies. That's kind of my thing. And not many people understand that, but that does help relax me.
That's the thing, it's a very individualistic experience, any form of mindfulness, and I absolutely love that, because it's something that's so unique to you. And what I picked up on from you saying that is that it made you happy. It's something that it takes you to a place where you can visualise it and be in that moment, and that's like really, really important. And so I suppose it just sometimes when meditation is just having that self-awareness is to kind of figure out what these things are. That is being kind to yourself, isn't it? And
sometimes I like listening to pieces of music that I have played in previous orchestras before, and it brings back happy memories with friends that I met at orchestras, friends that I used to go on orchestra tours with, not band camp, orchestra tours. But again, it's just, it reminds me of a simpler time and me going out having fun and doing something that I loved every year. And just listening to these things reminds me of that, and again makes me happy, and I forget about the stresses and the hardships that you're facing in everyday life. And most of the time, once I've listened to all of that music, I feel so relaxed that I don't tend to think about the hardships. And even if I do, I think, no, it's fine, I'm relaxed, I'm confident, I know whatever gets thrown at me, I'll be able to deal with it. it might be hard, but I'll get through it.
Yeah.
I just need to take it one step at a time.
Yeah, and I think that's what self-care is, isn't it? It's just being aware of what does make you happy, and a lot of people don't actually know that.
Yeah.
I remember that was one of the most like groundbreaking moments for me when I was younger, and like going through CBT and someone saying like, what stuff do you enjoy, what makes you happy, and like, oh my god, like, see, because I was sitting there going, I don't know. The thing is, I don't know how to answer it, because if you're not comfortable with somebody asking you that, then you obviously aren't comfortable with asking yourself that, and being aware of that yourself. So I think that's one thing that I would always suggest people to do, and that kind of takes me on to my kind of next point for mindfulness, and it's other practices that are a wee bit more interactive, a wee bit more working. So the things that I do a lot is like journaling, it's things like that. So people say like do your list. I'm a big advocate of like
lists.
Yeah, do your list, say what you kind of need to do, and have that kind of sense of achievement. Absolutely have that kind of stress-free mindset, but also journal as well, and like be so a lot of people talk about like a gratitude journal, and gratitude's a great form of mindfulness, because you are basically, again, you're being present, you're being humble, you're having that moment of appreciating the things that you do have, as specific as they need to be, because you're going to get more benefit of a gratitude journal the more specific you are.
Yeah, and some people I know, every night they write down 5 things that they're thankful for.
Yeah,
that day.
Things like that, isn't it? So I think it's probably a post we'll cover at some point, isn't it, gratitude? So but that's just one form of like journaling, and like I was given these books before, and it's things like, so this like a daily journal like 5 minutes before bed. So this is basically just documenting things that you're kind of grateful for that day. But you need to just recapping your day sometimes, and you can't really plan your next day until sometimes you've kind of put the little into bed. And then another one is 5 minutes in the morning, and it's like and all these things you jot down, and it gives you your kind of your tips, and your kind of preachings, if you like, on one side, and you kind of interact on the other side. So like self-help books for that purpose are brilliant, because you are playing a part in it, you're immersing yourself in the help that's given you, in the same way that kind of mindfulness books and things like that do it as well, and it kind of gives you different ways to meditate. So I would say that if you can get, like, anyone likes to read, I say mindfulness for like beginners and stuff is really, really good, and just that kind of first glance, the first look at stuff like that. Because it gives you all these different practices, how to meditate, how things like mindful eating. You've probably heard this before as well, like, or when you have a cup of tea or coffee,
yeah.
And it's a case to like smell it first and then drink it, and it's like paying attention to those things.
That's something else. I do like the smell of coffee. The smell of coffee
makes
me happy too. I don't know why. I just always love it.
Right, so these things are things like we know when we look back. So all our kind of mindfulness is just kind of paying attention to that, and when we maybe have that time in a day or whatever to do it, then absolutely do it. And sometimes it's you can do it once or twice and build a good habit with it as well. And before you know it, you've got this huge element of self-love to yourself every day. So that's one of the things I think we're always trying to really kind of push with Mindfulness Days, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's more to it than meets the eye. It sounds, like we said at the beginning, it sounds like it could be something that's quite whimsical, but ultimately it's about taking back control and reevaluating yourself. What makes you tick? What makes you sad? What makes you happy? Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but it's about taking back control of your body and worrying about the present and not about the future or the past, because you can't control the future or the past. It's out of your control, but you can control the little things in life. And sometimes it's celebrating those small wins that can help make you happy.
Yeah,
I think.
Absolutely.